Hey everyone, Mitz here, and today I'm going to tell you how to create some epic stories for your Dungeons & Dragons adventures. This is a rough list of the things that I like to consider when I'm starting writing an adventure for D&D. Writing a story for D&D is not easy because your players are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to guiding the story and the aspects of that story. However, there's some parts of the story are already in motion before the players and the characters even show up. There are definitely parts of the story that they won't be able to change because they're just not powerful enough yet. And of course, there are many parts of the story that they will be able to change, but will it be for the better? There are many parts of the story that the characters probably won't even understand. That is, until they start adventuring. Alright, let's get into it. So one of my first points for writing an adventure in Dungeons & Dragons is taking inspiration. Steal it. Yep, that's right. Structure your story as all great stories are. You don't need to make entire concepts and make everything hard for yourself. Look at many things that you like in books, movies, and video games, and take parts of these that you think are cool and repurpose them for your story. Use references to things that your players and their characters might know to make it more interesting. Hopefully they'll pick up and recognize some of these and catch on really quickly, and maybe it'll give them subtle hints to how the story's supposed to go. That doesn't mean they have to follow it. But having these references in there will make your story more recognizable and easier to follow. Also, if your players aren't really grasping onto a concept too well, but it is a reference to a movie, you can say, hey, do you remember that scene in that movie where that thing happened with that guy? And then hopefully that'll clear a few things up for them. Don't be afraid to use those ideas that you find in movies and other places to make entire stories. We all take inspiration from somewhere, and being completely original is overrated and super difficult, especially since the players are always moving parts in your story. It'll mean that the thing that you stole from will never really be exactly the same anyway. Okay, my second thing for consideration here is plot hooks and twists. So you've got the idea for where you might want to start, but how do you get your players into that part of the story? And how do the characters get dragged into whatever's happening in the world at the time? Why the characters would be there could just simply be the types of characters that they are, or they just so happen to be in the right place at the right time. When aid is called for, when the beacons are lit, do they answer? Your story has to start somewhere, and character backgrounds are a great place to have a look for the initial parts of your story. And it's a great way to involve your players in the story from the very beginning. The plot should be easy to follow and be pretty understandable even at a glance from the very start, so that your players know what's up, and so they know where to go and what to do. Right as they get to a point that makes sense for a big reveal or something that they think is about to happen, yoink the rug out from underneath them. Throw in a plot twist and keep them guessing. This way, they'll always have something new to move towards, and your story can continue. Use this kind of plot twist sparingly though. You do want to actually give some closure on storylines, because the more you use this plot twist, the more your players will come to expect it, and then it no longer becomes useful. So my third thing here for consideration is writing stories that your players can follow. If you end up with too many twists and turns in your story, like I mentioned previously, the players won't really know what's going on, and they'll soon lose interest in the story of your campaign. Too many delays in what they think is important in the story will make it less meaningful for them to follow. Stories don't have to be super complicated to be compelling and fun. Most of the good stories out there are simple and easy to understand, and it's how the players and the characters interact with these parts of the story that will make it interesting and epic. Let's think for an example for a minute of Lord of the Rings. Get the ring into Mount Doom. Pretty simple goal. The party gets split. Okay, so Sam and Frodo find a NPC that is going to guide them to the right place. They sneak through the whole way and find themselves in some other challenges. Meanwhile, the other party learns that Sauron is making an army, and they need to gather troops to fight it off. It's pretty simple. But how they go about it, venturing into all corners of Middle-earth to gather allies, etc., is the much more complicated, player-driven part of that story. But that isn't the main story. The main story is still get the ring to Mount Doom and fight against Sauron. There are many other moving parts to this, relationships with elves and dwarves and other humans. They all need to be navigated and negotiated, but the main story is still very simple at its core. And the big reason for keeping your story simple is so that players never lose track of their goals, and they keep motivated to pursue it. Okay, my fourth thing for consideration here is giving some clues. Not all the information you dump on your players will be heard and retained. Players might not be taking notes, and people might need refreshers on why they're on a quest in the first place, especially depending on how often you play. It's easy to hold back on giving your players information when you want them to figure things out, rather than just giving them all the answers. Clues can be difficult to manage when you don't want to spoil some things for your players. But once again, trust me when I say you're not spoiling it for them at all. The players want to know. They already have their own theories, but when you give a big enough hint and something clicks, you'll quickly realize with their, "Oh yeah," or the, "Oh, yes, that makes sense," kind of comment. Or perhaps it'll be a, "Wait, what?" Use your scenes in your sessions to describe places, people, and things that might give the players more clues as to what's going on in the world around them. And hopefully this will give your players and the characters some small clues on what's going on in the story too. Fighting certain kind of monsters in certain locations, loot that they might pick up that belongs to an NPC that they know. All these are great clues you can give to your players that aren't just talking to NPCs and asking them a bunch of questions. Although that is a viable option too. Okay, the fifth thing to take into consideration is patrons. Oh, wait, actually, side note, other kind of patrons. Yeah, I have a Patreon, guys. You can go and check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/criticalbits. I also go by @criticalbits on all socials. You can follow everywhere, links down below, and I have some stuff up on the DMs Guild. It's right behind me, there, in that window. You can see there's all the different things I made. Links down below, go check it out. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Alright, back to the video. Sorry about that. Tip number 5. Yes, patrons. It isn't always enough for you to just have things happen in your world and expect that your characters are going to react to it. Well, at least not in the way you want. They might need a little bit of a push, and patrons are a great way to do that. They can certainly help them become motivated to act. They could be enlisted in a guild, hired by a noble, drafted by a knight, or asked kindly by a nice little old lady who's got a bag full of gold. Or she could be a hag. That's one of the plot twists I was talking about earlier. Doing things for others and gaining some kind of reward is a core part of Dungeons & Dragons. Take advantage of this to tell your stories. Use NPCs to tell shorter stories that might link into the whole picture. You can have factions that hear of the small good deeds that they've done for the community and enlist them for bigger tasks. And who knows, maybe these big tasks the factions have to deal with are somehow linked to the main story of your entire campaign. The main story itself could come from a patron to begin with. These patrons are NPCs that the players and the characters will trust, and they are the perfect targets for plot twists. Whether it be a betrayal from the patron themselves, or they are captured, injured, or even killed. As a tool to motivate the characters, of course. Perhaps this will push the characters to delve deeper into the story and figure out exactly why the patron was linked to the main story somehow. But the takeaway from this is your patron should be more than just a glorified notice board filled with quests. My sixth thing for consideration here is session to session and sort of overall story. Each session that you do should have a thread of something that helps move the story forward in some way, even if that thread is just the information on how to move forward from now on. The party might get stuck one session with what to do, and that session might simply be about information gathering. This might just be a small step to what they need to do overall, but every little piece of information they gather can provide more and more context for what they need to do in the future sessions. Let's say the party is stuck on an island because they were traveling from point A to point B. They were attacked by pirates and shipwrecked there. They need to get off the island. This is their current goal. This isn't the party going to destroy some Dracolich that's terrorizing the city, which was the main goal that they had to travel to point B in the first place. But while they're on the island, they find a cave that has some mysterious runes carved into it. A secret wizard's cave from long ago. The wizard that made the Dracolich. A treasure trove of information on how to help them in the future when they get to the city. Give them these clues. Link scenes and situations together. Plot out how they could learn more. Put it all together. Create story arcs that link major story ideas but are connected via smaller plot points to really help drive each individual session forward. And to keep the characters motivated by using their personal backstories. Don't forget, your biggest help here is the 3-act story structure. This will definitely help your stories feel more natural. Use an initial call to action to get your players and characters into the story right away. Follow it up with an idea, not necessarily the exact big bad evil guy, but an idea that there is something happening and it's nefarious and needs to be stopped in some way. Use characters' backstories to get them more motivated to pursue this information, and learn more as they go. Create complications that are morally ambiguous so they feel the weight of the choices ahead of them. And throw in a plot twist every now and then. Alright guys, I've been Mitz. That's the end of this video. We will see you next week for another one. Peace.